Hi, welcome back for this part of the afternoon. I have the honor and privilege of introducing our afternoon keynote speaker, Benita Law-Diao. Benita is a licensed public health nutritionist and contract manager and program research specialist for the New York State Department of Health's Division of Nutrition. Thank you. It's hard to keep up with Benita. She's everywhere all at once and contributes to the health and well-being of many, many people over her career. So she has worked with the Health Department's Nutrition of Elderly Pharmaceutical Insurance Programs, the Office of Health Insurance Programs, and various nonprofit organizations that include emergency feeding programs in the North Country to address food insecurity, and access to health care and affordable prescription coverage for children, families, and seniors for over 32 years. Since retiring, Benita serves on various boards, such as the Adirondack Park Agency, Cornell Cooperative Extension of Albany, and the Adirondack Experience Museum, the Adirondack Center for Loon Conservation, and John Brown Lives. She advises at Eagle Island Camp and with Hydro-Quebec Champlain Hudson Power Express. She's worked on the Underground Railroad projects and in the Capital Region and North Country for many years now. So I'd like to now welcome Benita.
I am so glad to be here. I've worked up here for more than 30 years. I first came here to the Adirondacks in 1989, and I love the Adirondacks as much as all of you that are here. I just sitting through the sessions that I've been through so far today, when I first started working here, a lot of the things that you guys are doing right now was not happening. And so it just warms my heart to see how people are working together, and we're starting to address the issues that really bothered me, compelled me to get involved in the Adirondacks the way I am. I'm from New York City. I grew up in Queens and the Bronx. I live near Albany in Latham, New York, but I'm up here so much that my neighbors in Latham don't even know I live there anymore. So, but, oops, went a little too far, too fast. So I want to give a disclaimer. I retired from the health department in 2019, and I'm not here to represent the health department. I can't speak to anything that the health department is currently doing or has done. I can tell you about my experience. I'm here to let you know what I've seen over the years as I've worked in the Adirondacks and what I hope we'll be able to do in the future so that we can try to address food security issues, poverty issues, because I care about the people of the Adirondacks. The people of the Adirondacks are the stewards of the Adirondacks. We wouldn't have the Adirondacks if it wasn't for the residents, the year-round residents that are here. And if we don't take care of them, we won't have our park, and we won't have the wildlife that's in our parks. So the reason why I titled this Blue Line Poverty, Food Insecurity, It's Real, Though Not Visible. When I worked for the health department, I learned that a lot of the state agencies really don't understand this area, and people who are up here were so surprised to see me up here this time of year. And the reason why people elsewhere don't know about the issues here is they don't really get to spend time here in a quality way and get to know the people who don't live in the nice big house, seasonal houses that are up here. And so that's the gist of the reason why I call it not visible, because a lot of people don't know about the struggles of the people who live here year-round. I grew up in the Bronx and Queens, And I love nature. It's weird that I should, because this is a park in the Bronx. And it had little caves, and it was right in the heart of a really congested area. But I learned to love nature wandering around in this park and climbing the rocks. And I always dreamed of being a rock climber or doing something in nature. So it was called Richmond Park, but as kids, we called it Echo Park, because you could stand on one of these rocks and yell and hear your voice. But this was the Bronx that I grew up in. It wasn't that way when we first moved there, but in the 70s was an awful time, and there was a lot of arson in the Bronx. The landlords were burning their buildings to get money because they had just built Co-op City. So our nice, vibrant neighborhood, everyone left the neighborhood to go to this new complex, and when they left, then they built a methadone center in our neighborhood, and it allowed, there was a heroin epidemic in the 70s, and so everyone thought if we give the heroin addicts methadone, they'll get off the heroin. No, they continued to take the heroin and they continued to take the methadone, but they also moved into our communities. And so when the landlords realized they had people that weren't paying rent, they would pay the drug addicts $20 and they would burn the buildings. And that caused the Bronx to just be on fire, and everybody who's ever driven through the Bronx in the 70s can tell you they were scared to go through the Bronx because it looked like World War II had gone through it. But that's where I grew up. And so I always aspired to be in a place as green and beautiful as this, and I treasure this. I didn't even know this existed till I went to graduate school. So my first time in the Adirondacks was when I was in graduate school at Cornell. My boyfriend, my nephew, and I, we rented a cabin in the Wilmington, Whiteface KOA in Wilmington, and that's where I learned about black flies. I honestly, no one told me about it when I made my reservation and I got here, and I guess none of the places here would tell anybody about black flies, but I'd come out and make my eggs, and I was frying eggs and black flies, and I got my protein. But you would think that would chase me away from this place and I would never come back. But ultimately what happened was I applied for a management development fellowship with the New York State Health Department. And I ended up working in the chronic disease unit when I first got there. So we dealt with cancer, diabetes, heart disease, but everything we did was down in New York City. So me being an urbanite, I'd take the train into New York City, and everything that I did, even when we went to Buffalo or Syracuse, those are all urban areas. We never came up here. We never even thought people up here have heart disease, or even tried to put a pilot, a control up here. So all my orientation was to urban areas. I became a dietitian to reduce the mortality rate. I believe in prevention. When I went through my dietetic internship, we learned biochemical. A lot of people don't realize there's all these different fields in nutrition. So the three big ones are biochemical nutrition, where you're doing research in labs and such, clinical, where you're in the hospitals and those kinds of settings, and public health or community nutrition. Well, I didn't want to work in the hospitals because you get the people after they've not done prevention. And I wanted to be able to do prevention. I wanted to keep them from coming in the hospital. So after my fellowship, I ended up coming to the Division of Nutrition. I apologize for that noise, it's probably my phone. I ended up in the Division of Nutrition. And so what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about how the health department's set up and the whole evolution of emergency feeding in the department. I don't want to assume that you know how we came to be where we are right now. The Department of Health, the Division of Nutrition in the Department of Health, they administer the WIC program, the Women, Infants, and Children's program, the Farmers Market Nutrition program, the Child and Adult Care Feeding program, and the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance program. And it used to be called the Homeless and Destitute program, which when I came to the program, I was blown away. I was like, who would name a program the Homeless and Destitute program? What is this? And I would go out in the field, and I was embarrassed to even say the name of the organization. But we, in the 1982 was when they had started the first food bank. The first food bank was out in Rochester, was Food Link. So here I am in this program that, I really want to get, I've seen hungry people, I wanted to get food out in the community, but why do we have this funny name that really doesn't honor, recognize the people in a reasonable way, a respectful way? At the time when I came to the department, well, I was working for the Maryland Department of Health and Mental Hygiene when HIV and AIDS had blown out of control. HIV and AIDS was really hit the news in the 1980s. And global warming was starting to be in the news back then. And when I first came to the department, they just started the AIDS Institute. So these are some of the programs that were being created that existed at the time that I first came to the department. So, we were looking at nutrition for AIDS clients. I ended up, from the position that I had filled a vacant position. We had food pantries and soup kitchens at the Regional Food Bank of Northeastern New York, and the Department of Health was funding. But we usually, when we give them money, we have to go and make sure they're running the programs properly. There hadn't been anyone in my position for 4 years. So for those 4 years, no one had gotten any technical assistance, no one had gotten any guidance. So they said, clean this up. So I would go out of the office, I'd be on the road for the whole week. And anybody else, my coworkers didn't believe I was really traveling around the way I was, but it was such a blessing. I got to come up in the North Country and go into parts of the North Country that no one ever went to, no one in the department had ever gone to see their food pantries, to understand their issues. So every single place I went in, I learned something new. I'd go into some food pantries where the guy who worked for the Department of Transportation had a closet that had food in it because there was nowhere else in town to be storing food, right? He was the one who took care of the water for the town. He had like 2 or 3 part-time jobs, and a lot of people up here hold 2 or 3 part-time jobs just to be able to survive up here. So this guy did this. He did at least 2 or 3 jobs, ran the food pantry, and then volunteered for a variety of other things in his community. For me, that was an invaluable way for me to get to understand how people live here and how they're surviving in the Adirondacks. But my coworkers didn't see that. Other state agencies didn't see that. I would come up here in the wintertime, and people would say, why are you coming up here in the winter? No one from the state usually comes up in the winter, or the federal government. We don't see you guys till the spring. And so some of my contractors were a little annoyed with me because they didn't expect me to come and do program reviews, so they figured they'd kind of slack off on certain things until spring. But here I was every month in the winter, I'd show up here. But that's how I got to understand some of the issues and things that were going on up here. So the Homeless and Destitute Program, when we first started, we only got $1 million from the state. WIC, Farmers Market Program, Child and Adult Care Program, those are federally funded programs. Some of them actually get, like WIC gets a little additional state dollars, but the Homeless and Destitute Program only got state dollars. It was only $1 million. The advocates had fought for that money to be put in there. And then so for almost 10 years, we were funding all 8 food banks in the state with that $1 million. We couldn't do very much with it. And you'll hear some other reasons why there were some big issues at the time, too. So naively, I got involved in emergency feeding, believing, hey, I'm going to do this, and then, we're going to eradicate hunger. That's so naive. And, we're going to fix everything. It's just going to go away. And here I am 34 years later, and we're still fighting that battle. And I'm so thankful to even know that you guys are here and you care, because I see the progress. At the time, it was very dismaying to be out there advocating. I would advocate for the North Country, and my coworkers just did not get it, didn't understand it. To my boss's credit, every time we got a new staff person, whether it's a fiscal person, any paper pusher that was nailed to her desk, he made them come out with us and come to some of the food pantries and soup kitchens, because he really wanted them to know, what really touch the people, know the people, see what, because if you're going to be lazy about doing the paperwork, do you know how many people you're affecting? So I really appreciate my boss having, cared enough. So for those of you who may not be familiar, these are the food bank regions. These are the 8 regions. The regional food bank has 23 counties north of New York City. I would travel those 23 counties to do program reviews, to provide nutrition assistance, to do food safety and sanitation. When I was preparing for this project, because we always call the northern part of that region that the regional food bank serves North Country. But I did kind of consider St. Lawrence the North Country, but I didn't realize that ANCA considers 14 counties part of the North Country. Clinton, Essex, Franklin, Fulton, Hamilton, Herkimer, Jefferson, Lewis, St. Lawrence, Saratoga, Oneida, Oswego, Warren, and Washington. So there are more than 255 food pantries in those counties that I just mentioned. There are only 16 soup kitchens. And so the other parts of ANCA's service area are covered by the Central New York, the Food Bank of Central New York. I thought I was going to make a difference and work hard, but one of the first questions I was asked is, by everyone, was why, where did you guys come up with this name, homeless and destitute? And how do you identify who's homeless and who's destitute? So in 1987, we finally got around to do a census. I can tell you that doing censuses can be very political. And so we would do a census of who we were serving, and I just love that you guys are starting to collect data. Oh my God. We can do some great damage here in terms of, I mean in a positive way, in that if we work together and pull this data together for the 14 counties, for regions, we can do so much to get resources here, because federal agencies and state agencies want to see collaboration. They want to see that you're creating models that are replicable, that you can take to other parts of the country. They want to see that you're efficiently using money. So if you're working together, if you're sharing data, if you're showing that certain issues are common and that we need, this, just to pull everybody together so that we'll show the numbers. Because when they see these that's that little town or that little county, and it's only a few people there, we don't need to worry about them, we'll forget about them. And that's part of the reason why you're invisible, because one, the data's not there, no one cared enough to collect the data, but they're only seeing this one little county over here, and they're not really concerned about you, because, no one's going to make a big fuss, no one's going to draw this attention to anybody, and even if they do, it's a small little county over here. But if you're showing a region, and that these are the issues in the region, and you're getting to the right people, we can make a difference. So that's I really just want to shame the right people and get them to get up off their butts and really do the things that need to happen here. So we had the census. We realized as I was traveling around, we'd go into food pantries and soup kitchens, and people would have 30-year-old refrigerators that they're putting food that was donated into the refrigerators. And, they had food sitting on the floor. So we developed a capital equipment program, and originally the Department of Health was administering it. Over time, we gave it to the food banks to administer. But then we were able to give refrigerators and stoves and shelving and whatever equipment allowed you to keep the food safe that was being donated. At the time, and this is the beginning of emergency feeding, people would donate food, and it would be past code date, so there weren't any rules about code dates, and and we'd get lots of cans of food that canned asparagus, I mean, if they make canned collard, just think of something that you don't want to eat. It's in a can, and it would get donated. And, it was really unfortunate because then, as nutritionists working for the Department of Health, we're like, how could somebody make a healthy meal when we can't even make a whole meal? You've got like all these cans of vegetables, there's no protein, there's no carbohydrate, what is this? And so we advocated for the food banks to be able to have nutritionists in the food banks. But the food banks were only giving out what they had donated to them. But there were also people who were in the food pantries, people who were donating the food, who figured if they're hungry, they'll eat whatever we gave them. And that was so disheartening. We're like, but we care about the people, we care about the health. How could I be in public health and give you something like this and say, well, if you're hungry, you'll eat whatever we give you? Up here, in Franklin County and Malone, there are some people who realized that the farmers were machine harvesting crop, and a lot of times they'll use the machine and it'll go in and grab all the potatoes that are a certain size and drop the little ones in the field, and then they get plowed under. So someone in Malone decided, hey, we can go in there and glean those potatoes. We can hand pick them since the machine's dropping them. And it ended up being tons of potatoes that ended up all over the state. That there were so many that they'd come to the North Country, but then they end up going, we had so many, they ended up in New York City. They ended up in central New York. They did that for corn, because the machine would, take all the corn at a certain level up, and everything that was below ended up getting plowed under. So they'd get people in there to hand harvest that. So we had a gleaning project in Glens Falls, one in Malone. We realized that we needed to teach people food safety and sanitation. So we trained all Division of Nutrition staff in food safety and sanitation. Then we made sure that all the food bank staff got food safety and sanitation. We did a train the trainer, and then they went out to all the food pantries and soup kitchens. We also provided them with gloves and hairnets and other things that would allow them to manage the food safely. And then finally, in 1987, we changed the name of the program from the SNAP Homeless and Destitute Program. We had a retreat, and I couldn't keep my mouth shut, and a few other people couldn't either, and we just said, this has got to go. And so we ended up calling it, and it took months for us we went through team building and all kinds of, we finally came up with a hunger prevention and nutrition assistance program, because that's what we were about. We're trying to prevent hunger, and we wanted to provide nutrition assistance and education. So the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance, it was a former New York State Department of Social Services. They administer the food stamp program. You would think it'd be in the health department, but they had it. So they, advocates had gotten the food stamp nutrition education program to be developed, because people were getting food stamps and they didn't know how to manage the food stamps. And so, people were running out, they were buying junk food with it, and they wouldn't have food stamps to the end of the month. So this money came into the state for this food stamp nutrition education program. Most of the cooperative extensions around the state applied to be nutrition educators for this program. Our program, the Hunger Prevention and Nutrition Assistance Program, we were now, we got a little bold because they're starting to listen to us. They let us change our name. So, hey, let's see if we can get some of this money. So we applied to another state agency for a grant, which was that's not done too common, because everybody's got their silos. We applied to the food stamp nutrition, to the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance program, and we got a grant, because they had vision. They had this really progressive woman there who said, yeah, you're dealing with food pantries and soup kitchens, and people who come there get food stamps too. Yeah, we think you should have that money. So we created the Just Say Yes to Fruits and Vegetables program. We started providing nutrition education, fresh fruit and vegetables to these folks. We created some minimum nutrition standards, because as I said, we were, the food bank only had what was being donated to them. In 1997, let me get the year right. I think it was 1997, we actually got more money. So when we started the capital equipment program, we'd gotten $1 million more. So we just had $2 million when the capital equipment program started. But finally in the 90s, we got $10 $10.6 million. And that allowed us to think out, do some of the things we'd been dreaming of doing. Hey, the food bank can only give out what they have, what's being donated, but maybe we can start to buy food to supplement it. We can buy healthy meats, we can buy dairy, we can buy produce where produce wasn't there. We will develop some nutrition standards. So that's when we went into the food pantries, the soup kitchens, that said, if you're giving out a package, you should be able to give at least 3 meals, 3 complete meals per day. And at the minimum, if you're getting state dollars, we want you to at least give them food. If the package should be at least a 3-day package. So those standards, it's that if you want any of our dollars, you're not just going to give people a package and let them go out the door with just anything. We also started to hear that, clients didn't want you to give them a bunch of foods that weren't, I might be Latino and I might like more beans and rice and whatever. So if I'm coming to you, why are you giving me all this pasta and other stuff that I won't eat? So a lot of our food pantries, in Syracuse in particular, started client choice, where people can kind of pick what they want. Now that initiative has gotten a little bigger, and they're doing more of that. So the whole time I'm out there in the field, I'm learning more about the North Country. And just North Country residents, they're proud, they're self-sufficient, they're hardworking, they're frugal, they're resourceful, they live in low-density areas, they love the quiet, calmer pace of life. This is what I'm learning from my encounters with people here. But, they possess a cultural identity that's different from city dwellers. And in doing it did hinder their ability to access things, because when I would come through and say, look, you've got that 30-year-old refrigerator that farmer so-and-so gave you, look, I can get you a new refrigerator or a new freezer, or they're like, no, we don't want government handout. And I would have to go back in there and go, but look, do you pay taxes? Do you know these are your tax dollars? Do you know that if the money I tell them that 60% of the dollars that would come into our program automatically went to New York City. So 40% of the money got divided by the rest of the state. And so you are, a rural area. If you don't take the dollars that are for your area, and if near the end of the year, when we start looking at our unspent dollars, it goes back into a pot, and then they decide who gets the rest of this money. Well, New York City had been waving their hands all year long saying, we need more, we need more. We could have given them a whole pot, and they still would have wanted more. So I would tell them, look, if you don't take the money, it gets reallocated, and it usually goes into urban areas. But these are your tax dollars, and you have needs here. Why aren't you taking what's here for you? And that's how I'd get them to take the equipment. I'm not doing anything illegal, immoral, or I'm letting you know what your rights are, what you're entitled to. And so those are the kinds of conversations I would have to have with people here, because there's that pride. There's we're going to take care of our own. And I'm proud to know the people here, and I respect them for that. But I want you to get what's due to you. So I care deeply about the land and its wildlife, and so do the people here. But there are lots of misconceptions about Adirondack rural life that people who don't live here have. And I would go into state meetings, and when they were reallocating those dollars that I'm talking about, I'd say, well, I was in this agency, and this is a problem, and I was in that. And my coworkers would get angry with me because they know I'm from New York City. They know I'm an urbanite. They know I live near Albany. And they're like, why are you defending these people? They have a house. They must have money. Most rural people are farmers. They've got food. If they're a farmer, they must have money. There's lots of open space where they live. They must have money. They chose to live in a rural area. They must have money. Most people who live in Adirondacks have other homes. No. And people who live in rural areas live off the land. They don't need the things that urban people need. So these are the people that I work with that I know in urban areas that, they believe these things about you. And so when you're trying, even legislators, so when you're trying to get money up here for the things that you really, really need, I'm sure there are a lot more misconceptions than these. We need to find ways to educate them, to let them know. We need to give them hard numbers, the data, the stories. We need to share them, the qualitative and the quantitative data. We need to let them hear what's really going on. We need to bring them up here. I bring people up here. I want them to get to know you. I want them to get to see, the beauty, but I want them to understand, especially the people that are working in these service organizations. I want them to see what needs to be done here. This is how we're going to save our North Country. This is how we're going to protect our state. I mean, we need to do these things. So urban areas, we all know we know they have no supermarkets, and I'm not discounting urban areas. These are the things that go on in urban areas, right? But people think these are only urban area issues. The convenience stores, the substandard housing, the dense, you see it in the news all the time, the home heating costs, the low-paying jobs, and I'm sure you're sitting there going, what's she saying? We've got that here. Look at there are no supermarkets in town within 10 miles. We have convenience stores that really don't have a wide variety of stuff. Our food costs are high. We have substandard housing, little or if any public or affordable housing. We have slumlords. You have slumlords up here, people who own property, they'll rent it out to anybody. And I can tell you, when I work with food pantries and super kitchens up here, I've run into young people, who might be 18, 19, young people just getting out of high school or may not have graduated from high school. They're living in their cars. They live in places that have dirt floors. These are the people I would see coming to food pantries. Home heating costs. I mean, you guys have real winter. I mean, we complain about winter, but you have real winter, and you don't even have the sources of heat, the heating sources that we may have in our area. Public services are out of reach, so, okay, you live in some remote area in the Adirondacks, how are you going to get into Lake Placid or wherever the county seat is to get whatever services you need, to get to a doctor, to get, your checks, to get to a bank? The average commute to work is 12 to 30 miles. I've just recently, during the FISU World University Games, I met a woman who worked in a hotel, and she said that she lives in Malone, and she comes here, for a job that she thought paid her decent wages, but gas prices are so high, and she's driving 30 miles into Lake Placid and back. She can't afford to live in Lake Placid because there's no housing that's affordable. But, I mean, and so here it is, her paycheck's just going away with the gas. But there's no public transportation. It would have been nice if I think there isn't there something that runs from Malone into here? I saw some kind of weird bus, maybe it was just for the games. Okay, yeah, well, there goes that one. So you have low-paying seasonal jobs, so I know people that just work in the summer months or when the tourists are here, and then they no longer have a job, and they're working 2 and 3 jobs. I must say, the people that I've met that do work here are the most, that have jobs are so conscientious. They take pride in the jobs they do, and they put their hearts into them. So, I mean, you have a work ethic, a serious work ethic here. Lack of technology. I mean, during COVID, how, kids not being able to access the internet while everybody's learning online, and I mean, just that's an issue. Lack of resources for people with special needs, substance abuse, domestic violence, teen pregnancy. So, okay, they think it's only the urban areas that have these problems, and look, you have as many problems, and some more, and they don't even know about them. They don't think these exist. We need to start to educate these folks. Oh, limited access to health care, sorry. So I hope that we'll start to have a conversation here today, because who does not know about North Country poverty and insecurity? We need to think about who that is and why they don't. How can we educate public officials, organizations, the community about this invisible population's presence and their needs? How can we address the needs of North Country residents in a culturally sensitive way? We don't want to take what works in New York City and bring it up here. We want to address the needs of the people here in a way that's, most palatable and that they have a say in. So the other thing is, in my travels and in working with some of these organizations, and I'm just getting real here, that there's some problems within the communities here, okay? One, we need to not forget the seniors. We have seniors here that, they're in isolated areas, and I hope that there are networks or things that are being done to where people will, take an inventory of where the seniors are in their community and try to figure out, well, what are their needs? How can we make sure that the seniors aren't in isolated areas and don't have services? But there's county discrimination, and I can give you an example. I was working in Franklin County, and we needed to hire someone for a position, and they did not want anybody from Clinton or St. Lawrence County. It had to be, and I'm like, well, why? All the people that were qualifying for the position seemed to be coming from Clinton County. The resumes were perfect, and in several instances, we were told, well, we want this person, but they don't have the skills of this person that we're trying to get from this county. They didn't want them because they're from another county. So there's this county competition, I guess. I don't know. Then you have the classism that goes on. You have the people with the money and the people who don't have the money. Being a person of color, when I say racism, I'm not talking about racism against me. In this particular instance, I didn't know there's this white racism where you guys discriminate against each other. I'm just getting real. I was like, I always thought this was a pretty homogeneous community. And then I see these subtle things that you guys do to each other, and I'm sorry, I'm being real. You do some interesting things to each other just because of subtle little differences amongst you. This is a community that needs to stick together. The political divisions, I've seen the Democrat and Republican things that go on, and it's pretty crazy up here. And then the indigenous concerns. For me, I've seen that we had a position for a nutritionist that was supposed to work in one of our agencies. She lived on the reservation. We wanted to hire her. She had gone to SUNY Plattsburgh, got a degree, top of her class. And she, in the end, she ended up moving into Franklin County because they wouldn't let her live on the reservation. And she said, look, I could commute to work. And we didn't know it until after she told us months later and she was hired. But one, they didn't want people to know that she was coming from the reservation. So, I mean, these little subtle things happen within here that, I hope that you'll start to address these things because that's hurting you. And these are things that I've seen consistently. I've been up here for 30-something years. So, yeah, I should have written a book about all the things that I had seen. But these are the things that are separating you. And you don't want that to happen because there's so much need here. There's so much potential here. And I want the best for the people here. So let's take care of the Adirondack North Country and its people. Rural areas provide valuable ecosystem services to our nation and the world for food production, carbon sequestration, stewardship, and biodiversity and habitat resources. Local leaders should work with the community to build rural resilience, including supporting clusters of locally owned small businesses that build community wealth, implement built environment and quality of life improvements for vulnerable residents, strengthening social cohesion between neighbors, nurturing new community-led structures to build capacity and advance community priorities. Coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, working together is success. I care about this community, I know you do. I am so proud to see all of you here and know the work you're doing. I'm not, I know a lot of you guys are working on these issues that I just brought up because I've been hearing it as I've been sitting in the sessions, but we need to let the people outside this area know what we need here. Thank you. Anyone else have anything? Oh, here's one, right in front of you.
Thank you so much for everything you had to say and share. Really put a lot of things together for me personally, and so I appreciate that. My question is, you earlier talked about, how you thought you were naive 30 years ago to believe we could end hunger. I'm wondering if you believe it's naive to believe in 30 years from now we might end hunger.
Seeing the youth today and the things that they're doing gives me so much hope. I was just at Syracuse at SUNY Environmental Science and Forestry, and I think this, if it's in the hands of the youth today, it's really we're going to make a difference, and we're going to, for some reason, our generation just really messed up, and it shouldn't always be about the money, and so if the youth have control, I really think we'll be able to make a difference, and hopefully, 30 more years from now, we'll be in a better place.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi, good afternoon. My name's David, small town in the Adirondacks. I'm just coming back from a Association of Towns kind of conference down in Manhattan. Why can't we bring stuff like this directly to the leaders instead of having the leaders come to us? At this conference, it was all about code enforcement, municipalities, et cetera, and this is not spoken about. What steps can we take to do that?
Well, yesterday I was Adirondack Lobby Day, and I was with over 100 people from the Adirondacks, and we went, we broke up into groups, and we went into each legislator's office, and we talked about issues in the Adirondacks and talked about our needs and what we hoped would happen. But we need to get to these people running these. We need to get to the legislators, but we need to educate or somehow or another get this information to the people running our state agencies too, our county agencies. I mean, that's why I think the data, every one of you that are doing services in the community needs to, if you don't know how to collect data, partner with some of the colleges that are in the area to see if they can help you start to figure out how you can start to collect data about the services and the needs that you have in your community. And then when Lobby Day comes, show up at those places, do press releases and put it out in the news. I mean, shame the people that aren't doing what they're doing to address your needs. You really need to get out there, and if they can keep saying, there's no problem up here, because, they're not hearing it, they're not seeing it, and they don't come up here. My coworkers, we made sure that everyone that came in our agency had a chance to go to rural and urban food pantries and soup kitchens, so that when we tell them to do something, they're not, doing something, they're not sloughing off on the job, because they understood that, look, if you don't do your job, then it's going to hurt a bunch of people. And I must say, the people that I worked with in HIPNAP really, really cared about the population we worked for. I've worked in the units in the health department, and the people were just paper pushers. And so, you'd have someone would take forever to process certain things because they didn't really connect with the people. But we need to get the information out there, and there's so many ways we could be doing it. We need to be, you could post it on social media, you can get it to the news outlets. If you've got data about issues that are in your community, and a lot of the local newspapers would love to have you feeding them information about who you're dealing with and what issues you have popping up. So, but the data, and then when you share it amongst yourself and just collect it all, so the bigger picture for the region, when you're applying for grants, that's so much power. That you're applying for grants, you're saying, we're not just serving, Lake Placid or Essex County. This is, we've got data showing what's going on in all of the North Country. I mean, Anchor probably would be able to help you find, connect with, or even some of the colleges like SUNY Potsdam and the Adirondack Community College. They've got people that are really good at collecting data and analyzing the data and maybe even helping you do the reports. They're here, I mean, and they could write grants, even get money to do the studies. So partner with them. So however big your organization is, find people in the community that can help you collect the data, do the reports, share those reports, learn how to share those reports with all the different entities so that you can put your story out there and be able to attract the money and the attention that needs to come here to do the programs that'll help the people. Adirondack Council did this year. They go every year. And I mean, just check in with them and they'll say, hey, join our group. I mean, we had red and black scarves on and everyone was going, why are you guys wearing red and black scarves? And we proudly said, we're from the Adirondacks. We're representing the Adirondacks. And I mean, I have a picture on my phone. I wish I could put it up here. So you could see all the people that turned out from the Adirondacks so that we could lobby for, all the issues that, each person got to speak to their issue. Whether they were from Dave Gibson, who he spoke out about environmental issues that he had. So everyone that had an issue got to go to the legislators that were over certain committees that they felt dealt with the issues that they felt were important. So, I mean, and actually our goal is to have 250 people come to Lobby Day next year. So if you are interested, contact the Adirondack Council and they'd be happy to see you. We got Paul Hay from SUNY ESF and Newcomb. He was there with us. Just a bunch of people from up here went down to New York. Get 250, we could have several buses.
Great. Just a final round of applause for Benita. Thank you. That was great. And we do have the Adirondack Council and ANCA both here. I won't throw them under the bus, but you can find them today.
We also talked about housing. So for those if that's an issue, we talked about housing. Yeah.
Great. And so our next breakout sessions are back to the other side. They start in about 3 minutes, but we'll start a little bit later for them.